So, CloudPick, after such a long stint in production from PDI to DreamWorks, and now something which is primarily a services and product driven company rather than an entertainment creation company. Please tell us about CloudPick.
Oh,
And
it's actually it's a little bit interesting story there. I mean, as you remember, I was involved in DreamWorks to help build up production capacity around the world. And in my journey, and many times through India as well, I have saw the potential, this tidal wave of young artists coming. I really felt like the world don't need more big studio. We need to really democratize the whole content creation space and be able to allow more projects to be created, because the demand for content is just going to escalate. During that's the time when the iPad and the phones start coming, I realized we need a lot more content. And the big studio model has very limited capability to create a lot of high volume of content. Right. And I always felt like that as an artist myself, I really wanted to be able to create projects, work with other people. We're having the headache of building a big studio. As you know, I built some big studio. Yeah. And that's just too many headaches with that. So the whole inception of CloudPick was the idea that how can you take all these years of experience and create something that, as an artist, I can use myself to help other artists to create large projects without building the big studio. Very simple concept. And, I built a lot of the technology we use over the years, and I understood a lot of the challenges we had, particularly when we did the work overseas to work with partners and project in India. As you remember, I was very involved in setting up DreamWorks initial studio in India, and I worked with project in Asia and Hong Kong and various other places. I really felt like to use this big studio model to duplicate that is too prohibitive.
Right.
So how do you rethink that whole process? CloudPick idea is to start building infrastructure, allow more people to connect to other people around the world, break down all the barrier between country, time zone, and really take the social network and turn it into a work network for content creation. That's really the whole base concept of building CloudPick.
Right. Where do you think the challenges is? Because if we are talking about a cloud technology, people are still taking very shaky steps on, especially on content creation DCC front, mainly of the IP protection, the data security, and the large volumes of data handling part of it.
Well, that's actually having, as you know, I have set up a lot of projects when we did the test in India with all the studio. We faced all those problems, right? You worry about security, you worry about transparency. Did somebody do something? Is it secure? Where is it stored? How you transfer it? Those are a big headache when you work remotely with the team. So when we started CloudPick, I set the rule. I say, I want to address the security problem, the transparency problem, and the ease of use problem from the get-go. The technology we're building is really a secure private network that allows people to work collaboratively together without that infrastructure, well worried about security. So data are very highly encrypted when it's moved between individuals, but also it's secure. Everything is stored securely on your machine, your partner's machine on the project, and we're trying to avoid storing anything. In fact, the data are never stored in the cloud. So I use the term cloud very differently than the rest of the industry. The Google version of cloud or the Amazon version of cloud is they can afford to buy a lot of equipment in the back room somewhere to hold your stuff. But I really felt like for a lot of developing country where that resource is not really available because people, they can't commoditize it. Right. So you're not going to get that free cloud storage. So what we're building a model is really a private network using peer-to-peer, secure peer-to-peer transfer technology to allow people to collaborate and share together. So it's very scalable, and it's pretty much free, because the whole idea is to build the infrastructure first, and we'll build a lot of added value on top of it to give people capability to manage it. But the one thing that's always hard to solve later on is the secure asset management. So we're solving that up front and make it invisible to the user. So as we can provide more tools later on for people to do more management, it becomes much more transparent. and then we don't have to struggle with building the big infrastructure.
Because there are standalone review and collaborating tools.
Oh,
there
absolutely.
are standalone off-the-shelf data asset
yeah.
management tools, and there are standalone pipeline and production management tools.
Right.
Now, when you deal with multiple artistic heads put together, there is bound to be some amount of production management and pipeline management to be put in place. And when you deal with people working on their own, they have their own rules and ways of working. So does CloudPick have a vision to also emphasize that and address that as well, or do you allow groups to form rules of their own?
As you know, I've visited probably more students than most people in a lifetime. And one thing you learn is, even though most people use the same tool set, the habit, the workflow is completely different.
Right.
So one rule I set as we set out to build technology is I want to be agnostic. I don't want to force people to change their work style, but yet I want to provide them the hooks to give them all the capability we used to see in a big studio. So if I start out just myself with an idea at home, I say, hey, I have a great idea. I start putting it on there, and I go, hey, well, I want to invite you to join my project. I should be able to just type your email, click invite, and you accept. Then now we're connected. We're working on that project, and we can develop our own workflow. CloudPick is not out to change people. We're out there to help people, because you're going to have your own workflow. And we found that a lot of people out there have all these content management systems, all these pipeline systems, require people to alter their way of thinking. Because we really feel that for artists, the initial steps has to be as free-form as possible. So our technology support very free-form working. You just see a virtual drive on your machine, and then you instantly see that, and it's all connected, all synced up. But underneath is all the complex hooks to allow you to do the big thing that big studio used to, but you don't have to. Right. So the whole idea is to make it artist friendly first. Then over time we will build more added value. But we designed it to have all that capability from the get-go. So it's easy for us to give you more capability versus the other way around. So we feel that we have laid a path to provide the solution that big studio are used to without having to change people who are working.
Right. So do you think that over the years the people who are going to use CloudPick is going to be more individual people joining together, or do you think there is some scope for mid-sized studios or smaller studios as well?
Having built a lot of big systems, when we set out to build this, my team all came from big studio, and we said, look, we have to build this to scale up to handle a big film, and we didn't skimp on that one. We said we should be able to use the same infrastructure without changing it to do a 400-person project. So we designed that with the scalability in mind. So we move a lot of data on our test every day, so we want to make sure it's scalable to solve that big problem. No, I'm not doing this to solve the little problem, but I want to solve the big problem, but from the individual perspective. In fact, the whole system is designed from the artist's perspective. Most studios build an infrastructure and hook a bunch of people to it to work under their roof. My concept is we building something that allows the artist to work on many different people projects concurrently. So it's more artist-centric way of thinking, but still has all the security and isolation and protections and integrity to work on when you use this. I mean, our base system will pretty much be handed out to whoever wants to use it as we ramp our infrastructure. My hope is that people will invent new use for something like this. I think the content creation space going through a lot of evolution. Particularly this young generation create a lot of apps for mobile device, and this is a perfect platform for that.
So, most of the bigger studios around the world which are commercially successful actually are now setting up offices around Asia. And you were speaking on the rise of computer graphics in Asia at Siggraph Asia this time. So it is very clear now with players like DreamWorks having Orient DreamWorks, set up in China, that what the focus is going to be in the coming decade. So as we'll be speaking on the topic of this, what is your take on the same? Where do you see Asia is in terms of CG content creation?
I think you look at something like Oriental DreamWorks. That's a very major undertaking from both sides. I mean, it's a lot of dedication from DreamWorks side, a lot of dedication from China side to make that successful. And it's a very long path they had to take. but still leaves room for a lot of local individual, local studio to step in and claim their share of the market. The market's still very young. There still haven't been a major successful CG project out of China, for example. I think there's still a lot of room for that. So it's a very big country, a very large audience, and no single individual can dominate. And you know, they're on a timeline that still allow, I think, a lot of other potential studio to step in and play a major role in it. It's big enough for many players. So
Right. So the other thing that I wanted to touch upon was how do you rate the computer graphics R&D and research in Asia? Because you took a step, because you had seen the research over the years done in universities, collaborating with people. I know one or two universities specifically sending people to the Glendale unit and they're developing there.
Yeah, it is challenging because at the end, like I said in my talk, the tool business for our industry is just cannot justify a business by itself. I was at Autodesk just recently, you know, having a discussion with people in Autodesk about this particular problem. Because from a software business standpoint, our industry is still too small to justify a real commitment to long-term development and advancement. Many of the tools we use still, you know, stuck in 20 years old mentality, which is unfortunate because the world has moved forward by quite a bit. You know, the cloud environment, we should have a whole new set of tool set for that. That does not exist because there hasn't been a commitment to it. I mean, this is challenging for us. You know, when we're raising money to develop this and our focus is really on content creation, people tend to shy away from it. They say, hey, you know, that's too small a market. Yeah. Because it is a small market. But I think there's still a lot of growth for it because the demand for content will continue to grow, especially all the developing market.
So, last question, do you see a global distributed production pipeline being a reality? And with the challenges, especially with software licensing, production management, data security, and in the end, what message and vision do you would like to give?
I believe we have solution.
Yeah.
What we're building solves a lot of those problems. I think over the next year you'll see a lot of that come into play. And we really believe that security is solvable, software distribution is solvable if we take an approach that we are solving a distributed platform. Right? If you take the traditional model, then it's tougher to work around it. But if you start out the way we're thinking, that hey, we're gonna our number one rule, this is distributed, this has to be secure, then the problem actually becomes much easier to solve. So it's really now getting all the software developer to understand, hey, this may be a different way of thinking, but you can work in this space and protect your IP, which is, I think, a key for a lot of people. I mean, we were amazed. Even a lot of artists, you know, are very concerned about IP protection. They don't want to put their content on somebody else's server because they worry about somebody stealing their idea. So we're trying to address that.
So in the end, what does someone like you get inspired from after a 26 to 27 years stint in the same place, which is not much of a common thing around in any places, especially in a country of India where the iteration level is you know, so high you can't hold on to your job for more than a year and then start young and fresh with starting a new innovative company which is still at a research stage in many fields. So what would be your last message for the audience?
My message is we are in an industry that's still pretty much in many ways in its still early stage. We have not give people the environment and tools they really need to be highly productive. And I wake up every day thinking I can do what I did yesterday better. That's how I get motivated. I've been doing this for over 30 years now, and I still, you know, tell my wife, I tell my wife this story from when we first met. I said, look, I go to work every day because I'm doing something I've never done before, and I always approach what I do the same way every day. I wake up and I look at what the problem we face today and say, hey, gee, let's think of a new way of doing this. That's how you get motivated. So I don't take anything for granted, and I'm not afraid to make mistakes. So I get up every day, I make a lot of mistakes, but I get up the next day, I say, how can I do better than what I did the day before? And it's fun. That's how you keep motivated.